Hello, everyone. My name is John Taves, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that McNally Robinson is located here on Treaty 1 territory. That's the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. We're delighted that you could all join us both here physically and virtually on a balmy night here in Winnipeg for the Winnipeg launch of Izzy at the End of the World by K.A. Reynolds. We're particularly grateful to HarperCollins Canada for publishing this book in the first place, and also for making it so that we could all gather here tonight to celebrate. We've had the pleasure of launching many Christmas books in the past, and it's always such a treat, and we're so pleased to have her back here tonight. I won't take up too much of your time this evening. I just have a few procedural notes at the beginning, and we'll have some more at the end. But just to let you know, there will be a reading, and that'll be followed by a conversation. After the conversation, there'll be an opportunity for you folks to ask questions. I will run around with a microphone, and please be sure this is not a comment on your ability to project your voice. It's just to ensure that those watching at home can actually hear the question and prevents our host from having to repeat them. If you are watching live on YouTube right now, please feel free to just write any questions you might have into the chat, and we'll be sure to put them to K.A. Reynolds as time permits. At the end of the event, the only thing you need to keep in mind right now is we ask you all to remain in your seats for one moment while we safely transport the author over to the signing table beside the cash desk. After that, you'll be able to come on down, and I'll have more completely thrilling notes about signing procedure for you at the close of the event. But now, on to the most important part of the night. The Last Kids on Earth meets Margaret Peterson Haddix in Izzy at the End of the World, a middle grade adventure about 14-year-old Isadora Wilder, better known as Izzy, an autistic girl surviving the end of the world who must team up with her lovable dog, Akka, to uncover the hidden truth behind her family and the rest of humanity's disappearance. It's a book that's been called heartbreaking and hopeful at the same time, a story with grief, love, and acceptance in its center, encased in an alien adventure that is impossible to put down, by Beth Revis, the New York Times bestselling author of Star Wars: Rebel Rising, amidst a lot of other praise. Reynolds has always been such a favorite of our staff here, readers, teachers, just spanning the gauntlet. So it's always wonderful whenever we have a new book. K.A. Reynolds herself is a head-in-the-clouds widow and neurodivergent author from Winnipeg, currently residing in the hills of Vermont. When not lazing about with her goofball dogs or wandering the sun-dappled wood, she enjoys writing books for kids and adults by candle and moonlight, laughing hard and loud, and reading dark and colorful tales expertly crafted by other imagination astronauts in love with words. Your host for the evening, Nicky Mehta, is a singer-songwriter, writer, speaker, and mental health advocate. Her work with the Juno Award-winning folk roots trio, the Wailing Jennies, has taken her all over the globe, and her advocacy within the group has raised tens of thousands of dollars for the National Alliance on Mental Illness and the Canadian Mental Health Association. She is thrilled to be a part of the launch of her oldest friend, K.A. Reynolds' new book, and excited that this work will resonate, particularly with kids dealing with mental health issues, neurodiversity, and grief. So with all that said, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to K.A. Reynolds.
Hello. Thank you all for coming tonight. It is bitter cold outside, and I'm really happy that you're here. I think I'm going to read the first chapter of Izzy at the End of the World, if that's cool with you. Ready? 36 minutes before everyone vanished, I was playing video games with my little sister Maple. We were tucked up cozy and warm in a house on top of a mountain high enough to touch the night sky. It was late summer in Vermont, September 19 to be exact. A cool breeze slipped through the evening air, perfumed with wood smoke and pine. My grandparents were awake, talking real quiet on the couch, almost asleep. Me and Maple were creating new avatars in our favorite game, if you call rolling on the floor and laughing while making up hilarious character names, actually playing the game. Everything was normal, nice, quiet, at least it was, until my sister made me yell at her again. Maple, no, you could not name your night elf Fartmaster 19. We were howling so loud, Graham startled awake on the couch and hollered at us to hush. What? Maple 12 going on 18 answered while shaping Fartmaster 19's nose. It's not like your cat lady's name is any better. I whipped around fast, laughter gone. How dare you talk about, oh my God, I love corn that way. She's a serious and smart cat lady who just happens to enjoy corn. Everybody thinks she's amazing, see? I pointed my controller at the townsfolk and dragon on screen reflected in Maple's big hazel eyes. Here comes the Dragon Slayer lady to worship, oh my God, I love corn. Maple gave me a look from behind a wave of brown hair that said, ooh, I'm embarrassed to know you and I couldn't love you more. I knew how Maple felt because that's how I felt about her too. Okay, fine, Maple groaned and deleted the name Fartmaster 19. If I can't use the name I want, what about something we agree on, like your cat lady stinks and so do you? She ducked before I threw my pillow at her head like she knew I would. I gasped, how dare you? I do not stink and my cat lady can't help smelling like corn. It's literally all she eats. Oh, I dare, Maple tried not to laugh, and I dare all the way over again too. I gasped and collapsed dramatically on the floor. Fine, change it back to Fartmaster 19 if you want, but if the villagers make fun of her, that's on you. Pleased with herself, Maple grinned and changed her avatar's name back to Fartmaster 19 like she planned to do all along. Elves, I mumbled, grabbing my controller with a ghost of a smile. Then we joked and fought and played until Maple got sleepy and went to bed, bragging about Fartmaster 19 the whole way. While Graham scrolled her phone on the couch and Pops heated the oil for popcorn, I snuck outside to peer up at the glitter-bright stars. Out on the deck by myself, it was just me and my thoughts and all the peace in the world. As always, I gravitated to my mom's amethyst necklace strung by a silver chain at my neck. Amethyst was my birthstone and my mom's necklace was special. Twirling the raw, oversized stone comforted and grounded me. Just touching it made me feel closer to her. The deck lights flickered. Izzy, Grams hollered at me on the deck and I jumped. How long are you gonna be out there? It's cold. Grams had a mess of curly brown hair like mine topping her head, a set of dimples like mine poking her cheeks. All the love and fire in the universe flickered inside her fierce brown eyes. But goodness, was she always worrying about me being cold? I'd only been outside a few minutes, but according to her, I might as well have been lost in the Arctic for years. I stared at her through the sliding glass doors and knew exactly what her next words would be. You'll catch your death out there, Isadora. Now come on and get your sweater. I squeezed my mom's amethyst in my fist and sighed. I already had on a sweater, a Star Wars one Grams had made me with Yoda on the back. Strong you are, knit written underneath. Not to mention my fleece leggings and thick wool socks. I definitely was not cold. My grandfather, who I'd always called Pops, grinned at me from the kitchen with smiley blue eyes like he knew all the secrets of the world. Do what she wants, Izzy, he called through the glass doors. You know she's always right. He gave Grams a side-eye smirk. She looked back at him, nodded and laughed. And it was good. It was right. It felt like the dark days of our history, all the hard times that came before this were light years away. We locked eyes then, first me and Grams, then me and Pops, the two of them inside safe and sound. Me outside on my own, night wind stripping me to bones. I'll never forget that moment, as if all the words we never said to each other whispered between us. Who would have guessed that look we were sharing was goodbye? When I turned back around to the stars, an odd light gleamed at the far edge of the sky. That light was twice the width of Venus and shone brighter than the whole blanket of stars. It was like the mysterious light had pinned itself to the heavens as if waiting for me to find it. Most would have said, that's just another star. And I thought that first too, until my brain said, Izzy, you've been watching this sky the same since you were born. Your brain knows that light wasn't there before. Trust your brain, that light is no star. Suddenly, I really was cold, freezing water down my spine cold. Do you see that? I asked Grams and Pops without looking back, but the wind stole my voice and dropped it into the valley before they heard me. So I kept watch, pushing the curls away from my face and digging deeper into the mystery. Grams' eyes were so hot on my back, I thought Yoda might catch fire. But tonight I couldn't look away from that strange light in the sky, and I had this nagging feeling that that light was watching me too. I think I'm gonna leave it there.
This is very exciting. This is the second book that I've been honored to be interviewing Kristen. And this book is fantastic. I read it a couple of days ago. I actually got my own copy in the mail today, but it's awesome. You guys are gonna love it. I want you to tell us a bit about the set of events that were going on when you were writing the book, and at what point did you start the whole process of writing Izzy's story?
I actually wrote this book before my second book. I drafted the whole thing just in one quick shot, and I didn't get back to it until after, because I'd been contracted to write my second book when the idea came to me. So I had to leave it for a while and put it in my pocket and wait for a bit. But she just she came to me like they all do. She just popped into my head, like talking to me, just in her voice, just telling me her story. And I was like, I loved her voice. I loved her voice. Sorry, my other books, but more than any other voice of any character I've ever written. So sorry to interrupt, but did she come to you fully formed? Like, when your character comes to you, do you see them completely the way that they are right off the bat? Yeah.
Okay. So they're
name and everything.
okay.
Yeah. The Fleming Wilder.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I read that, but
Yeah.
it's a beautiful name. Yeah. And they just, yeah. I mean, that's a fascinating thing for anybody, I think, who doesn't write.
Well, everybody writes differently too.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely.
Like some people have to plot the whole thing out.
Right.
It comes to me like I'm hearing someone talking to me, and I'm just, writing it down.
So since you had to actually go back to the book you were writing at the time, where does she go? Is she there in the background?
I opened my Word document and just wrote down like a few bullet points about her and what she wanted. And I wrote like a synopsis. It started off like, I am legend for kids. That's what I wanted to write. And so I wrote that down. I wrote what she and whoever she met along the way would get into. And then I went back to my book.
And so she sort of recedes into the background. She's not like knocking on your head all the time.
All the books because I've written a bunch of books that I haven't even started trying to get published yet, but lots of them have to come out. The idea comes out, and then they sit around in the back of my head for like 3 or 4 years. I don't know why.
Wow. And they just sort of, do they ever pop up and kind of make their presence known if you're not paying attention to them?
Not really.
No,
It's just there'll be a moment, and it's like, oh, okay, it's time. And then I'll write it.
Amazing. That's such a cool process.
Yeah.
And it's neat to hear about it, because if you don't write, I think a lot of people would just guess. And like you say, different writers have different processes, but I think it's fascinating to hear about all of those different ways.
Yeah, same.
So the background of what was happening when you did eventually get around to being able to focus on her and her story. Can you tell us a little bit about what was happening at the time?
Well, when I rewrote it, because I rewrote it a bunch of times, but this last time I rewrote it, and actually I had, it's so different than my other books. Like my first 2 were very whimsical and, Alice in Wonderland-y, Coraline-y. This was completely different. So I didn't even know if my agent would want to, so I was like, I wrote the beginning of this book, and I was so nervous to send it to her because I thought she might think I was bonkers. But I sent it to her, and she was like, oh my God, I love her voice. Definitely write it. And I was like, yes. So I went and I rewrote it. And then, yeah, she gives me notes and then I rewrite it again. And it was, by the time we were finished rewriting, it sold to my editor of my first book, which was really cool because I love her. And yeah, that was sold in November 2019, before like the world went bananas. And then, yeah, and then so it takes a few months to get notes back on a book from your editor. So we're waiting around, and then COVID happened, and then.
And you were living with your family
In Maine.
In Maine
Mhm.
at that point, yeah.
Yeah, and then, so COVID, what was it? It was like March 17th when the world closed down.
Yeah.
And March 5th, we had gotten an eviction notice. For no reason, they just wanted their house back because their son was gonna get married, and we were like.
And this is 5 kids, 2 adults, and many animals at that point, probably as always.
Right.
Yeah.
But being that it was, and we were just, they said we had to be out like April 1st, but then COVID happened. And then there was like an eviction moratorium, and we were like, we tried to find a place to live. There was nowhere. Everybody had shut down. So we were just like, I'm sorry, but we can't go anywhere right now.
Yeah. And you're supposed to be writing.
I'm supposed to be
full-time.
rewriting the book, and
Right.
it was COVID, and now I'm homeschooling kids, and it's like, it was just, and then, yeah. So, so I started rewriting it, and that takes a long time. Like I had to rewrite 3/4 of the whole book for my editor, which takes a while with all that going on, right? And then, so then my husband had a stroke in July, kind of right in the middle of rewrites. And then we found out he had stage 4 cancer. So then he had brain surgery, emergency brain surgery, and they took a tumor out of his head. And obviously I went to my editor. I was like, I can't, I need time to do all this, and with the eviction and the COVID and the kids and the cancer, it was like, there's no way I can focus on a book right now. And they were great. They let me, oh yeah, whatever you have to do. And so that was awesome. So I didn't think about that book for months. And then Bob was doing chemo, and he was responding well to chemo and like feeling better. He was like drywalling the basement with his chemo bag on, like, this is great. Like, like, okay. So then I started writing. I'm like, okay, everything's rolling right along. So I'll get back into my book. And then I got, I think, 6 chapters from the end. And I knew that it was just, there was too much going on again with the whole COVID and cancer and doctors and da da da. So I got a hotel room for like 5 days. I said, I'm just going to check myself in and write this book, and I'm going to finish it. And then I won't have to think about it for months. So I did that. And then 3 days in, I was doing so great. I was writing like 4,000, 5,000 words a day. I was almost done. And then like Bob's oncologist called me, didn't call him, called me to say like he had a secondary cancer. And like he definitely, like, she wasn't worried about stage 4 cancer. I didn't actually know that there was something worse than stage 4 cancer, but I guess there was. And so basically I'm in this hotel room alone, and she told me like, Bob probably wouldn't last more than a few weeks. So that was hard. So I called him, and I'm like, I think I should bawling. I think I should come home. And he's like, no, I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. I'm always fine. I'm like, okay. So after a lot of debate, I stayed in that hotel room, like not having any idea what was going on or what the future was going to be. But I knew that was, I had to hurry through. So I finished this book, and the words just poured out. It was, I don't know how, I have no idea how I did it, but I did it. I did it. I finished the book. I turned it into my editor, and then I think it was 20 days later he died. So then again, it got put on hold for many months because I was writing a book at that point. It was like, I could,
Well, I mean,
barely.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just it was too much because the book is, it's like a grief book. She's like grieving, and I just couldn't do it. So I had nothing left.
Yeah.
So, and again, they were great, put it aside. And so it was technically supposed to come out like at least a year ago, but
Understandably was slowed down. I mean, I think anybody, and I think probably most of us have been through somebody in our lives having an illness and or dying, and you know, we have to go to work, we have to do what we do, but it's hard, I think, especially to imagine with an artist, especially writing about something that's already difficult subject matter, and then to have to go through that and continue to be creative.
with COVID.
Yeah, with
that
COVID
just made it
happening,
so
I mean,
much worse, like.
Yeah, it's a real miracle in some ways that this actually ended up coming to fruition, you know?
Oh, I know, because actually that's one thing, like I didn't even care. I was like, I don't care. I almost just emailed my editor and was like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to finish it. I don't care about anything. So, but I did.
Yeah.
Like I did. And it saved me because she was also going through getting over grief, or not getting over it, but like trying to, there's like a hump, you know, like it's the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. And like there's a point where you can actually get up out of bed again, you know?
Right.
And I just had to get out of that space. And it was probably 4 months after where I was like, okay, I'll let her save me.
Well, I was going to say, because you already had the themes of grief, you already basically had the book there. You'd finished the book.
And then so I got more notes back.
Right.
And then I just went through the whole thing with fresh eyes after just losing someone. And she had lost her mother a year ago. And just like lost her family.
Yeah.
So she, in the beginning of this book, like everybody just vanishes. She's in her house and they're having popcorn and they're watching a movie, and then the lights come in the sky and everybody's gone. And so she's grieving that too.
Right.
So it was hard to go through that. I mean, it was mostly me just crying at my computer for months at a time, but it was good because there was a lot of extra hurt I put in there.
Right, which makes for it adds a layer.
It sounds terrible, but I love that.
No,
like I love reading a book and like bawling my eyes out.
Well, for a writer and artist, I mean, that's what informs your art, right?
Yeah.
So if something like that is happening, it creates another level of depth there.
Yeah.
And so when you say she saved you during that time, can you say more about exactly what it was about, you know, writing her and revising the book that saved you?
She was, you know, so she starts out really, you know, she has depression. So she starts out in a bad place, obviously, because everyone's gone. And she has to work through all these emotions that were all the same things I was working through. But it was already on paper for her. So there's like a guideline for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as I'm getting her through it, I'm getting me through it.
Wow.
And a lot, I mean, I learned a lot about myself redoing this book for her, with her. It's always going to be really special to me for that. Because like we were like holding hands in the dark place, you know?
I mean, that's amazing. And I think that translates, you know, it comes out that sort of, I think as a reader, you don't really know, it's like this alchemy of things. And when a book really touches you, like hearing this, I'm sure, you know, people don't necessarily think of what an author is going through at the time that they write a book, you know, and so it's interesting to hear this story behind it. But I think when something really touches you, it's like, well, maybe I'm being touched by the fact that all of this happened to you, that all of this came together in this period of time, you know.
And it happens to everybody too. Like that's what I love about books.
So Izzy showed up in your brain one day,
in
your being, not necessarily just your brain. But so what was she saying to you? Or do you remember her first words to you?
She was telling me, the first words were like the original version of the book, which one of my kids really loves. It was exactly that. I mean, I love my first chapters. because they just come to me pure.
Okay.
And mostly my first chapter, lots of the book changes, but my first chapters like don't change too much.
But does she come to you narrating that?
Yeah.
Oh, so she narrates the
Mhm.
first few lines. That is amazing.
It's cool.
That's very cool.
Wow.
So she kind of told you, narrated the
And it wasn't
like the whole
stopping.
chapter,
I
or
was
just
like, stop, like, I gotta get a pen. Like, can you calm down? But she was just like, yeah, reading the story.
okay. So
I did put the foreword in. I put a foreword in the book. But the first chapter was just her talking to me.
and so like, did she give you that whole chapter basically? And actually that's part one. Did she give you the chapter? And do you listen to her tell you the rest of the book? Or how does that work in terms of like, does she tell you when another character is coming in and that kind
It's
of
a
stuff?
mystery. I don't know how it works. It's all magic. Like, I just sit down, literally sit down, and I just listen to the voice in my head and write it down.
And all
I
the
mean,
way
half the
through?
time I'm like, oh my God, really? Like, what? That's who that is? Okay, I have no idea.
So is there ever a point where you start trying to craft it from a like
That's
from outside?
editing,
Oh,
but not
okay.
drafting is just,
Pure,
yeah.
just comes out.
I mean, sometimes like the books that I'm working on now, I wrote synopses
Synopses.
for. So it's like a rough outline,
Okay.
but these ones, this was just, it's called pants, like they were pantsed.
Pantsed? Like as in pants? Like pants?
A pantser,
Oh,
a
okay.
pantser, seat of your pants, just writing.
Oh, okay. So your
Yeah.
pants, that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everything's a surprise, like half the time I'm like, oh my
That is, so she just shows up and is
Yeah.
like, well, I think, yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me as someone who writes as well, with totally different format.
God. Yeah.
But I find that with songs, it's like, with my songs, I come back to them 10 years later, I'm like, what does that even mean? Oh, that means something totally different. So yeah, like it is a really magical process for
Who
sure.
wrote this? Like, I don't
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
writing this.
So she came to you and she gave you, or she started telling you her story. Can you tell us like who she is? What about her? I mean, nobody's read it yet. So who is Izzy?
She's this like badass little autistic kid. She's 14 and she is she's confident but insecure. I mean, she's a whole bunch of different things, but I just love her because she came out so wise. Like she was wise. I mean, she's way wiser than me. Like, I honestly feel like it's not me writing when I'm writing,
Yep.
It's me editing, like when I go back and like revise it, but I don't know, wherever this comes from, like she was writing some wise stuff, and like, I don't know, I just, she's really, really strong, way stronger than I was at 14. I was, a mess,
I wouldn't say you were a mess. I think, things have changed.
Super insecure. I mean,
we were 12,
yeah.
13, like that.
Mhm.
I think that's pretty normal, but yeah. I mean, there was heavy stuff going on there. I mean,
Yeah.
the book is full of, I mean, you're talking about grief, you're talking about dying, something we have in common with our art.
Mhm.
We met at 12.
We're really
We both
obsessed with death.
grew up to be obsessed with death in our art. It's very strange. But yeah, so these are heavier topics. That I mean, the beautiful thing is that there's a comfort in, there's a confidence in how you're presenting it. Like, and it's such a normal kind of, this is real, this is what happens in life. There's no shying away from this. We are going to face this head on, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
And especially coming from a neurodivergent character
Mhm.
and a character who struggles with depression and is autistic, and like that you are able to show that whole world, which we're not seeing. We haven't seen a lot of that in books. I mean, I'm sure you're much more familiar with what is out there in the middle
Great. I know you always
I always want to say middle-aged readers, that's not what it is, but middle school, yeah. I don't know how, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more out there, but
now they're just
yeah.
starting to be, but for a long time, there just weren't,
There's
you
nothing,
know, just like, you know, it was all just like straight white people in books for a very long time. And like, finally it's like, it's starting to break out of that, and it's great because this is the first, I mean, The Spinner of Dreams is like, when I was writing that book, that's when I found out, like, or when I got my diagnosis. And I realized reading that book back, like, she is totally, you know, like she's neurodivergent if any character is, but she wasn't written with that
in mind.
Yes. So Izzy's my first character who's like, you know, and she's like got other stuff too, like IBS and, you know, anxiety and depression. And I gave her all my stuff.
It's beautiful, the whole, and we're going to talk about Raven,
I love Raven.
her road buddy. There's a lot of really beautiful exchanges because they both have their own issues, and there's a lot of really lovely exchanges with them where they are so, you know, so patient with each other and so like giving to each other when
that's how it should be.
Yes, absolutely.
That's another reason I love writing books, because I love to write what I would like in a perfect world, not a perfect world, but like this is how people should treat each other.
Yeah.
You know, let's give each other space. If you need space, like, you know, like there's one scene where she's just like, don't touch me, like take, you know, some steps back because I can't deal with, you know, like just, and he's like, okay, like totally whatever you need. Like that's cool. Like that's how it should be, right?
Yeah. And he gets that because he shares some of those things.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that I think reading the book, if you don't have those, if that's not your world and it's not a world you understand, is that the way that you write about her, and the difficult situations she's in and how she responds to them. Sometimes she has to say, you can't be near me. It really grows empathy, you know, because those of us that don't, you know, people out there, everybody out there that may not get those things, that behavior might be really difficult for them to understand. They might take it personally, they might, you know, but
he's disabled too.
Right. And
I mean, I just love it. I love them.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about Raven quickly, then we're going to go back to Izzy because we had a hilarious, rather, because there are certain people, I mean, I really see you in her, and we need to talk a little bit more about that. But Raven, I love his character, but I was thinking, okay, who is that? Who is this person? I'm not recognizing that from based on what I know about your life. So I asked Kristen who that was based on. The answer was not what I was expecting, but
Timothy Chalamet. Well, I mean, I wrote him first, but he was sort of amorphous. Like I knew who she was and what she looked like, but I didn't know anything about him. And I was like, I saw that layout where he did this layout where he was like wearing this really pretty blouse, like all these, it's like a photo shoot wearing
Saoirse
like
Ronan.
Beautiful, like silky blouses. And I was like, that is Raven.
And we both happen to love Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
So that is.
Yeah.
And then so his, like, did he speak to you in the same way that Izzy did? Like, did he come like and just present himself? And okay. So he kind of tells you who he is and how he feels.
He had to, I had to feel him out a bit more.
Okay.
But she came to me strong and I knew exactly who she was, but he had to.
When you say filling out, do you mean you, Kristen, the author, had to fill him out, or you had to ask him?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
So you had this conversation with him where you said, okay, what do you tell me more about yourself? Kind of
the thing is, the first story I drafted was totally different. It was like a whole Star Wars thing. It was like a big alien thing. And my editor was like, let's cut down on the aliens a little. And so I was like, okay, so he was a different person. So I had to essentially reinvent him.
Okay.
Because it was a different name and everything. So it was kind of switching out.
Okay,
I had to kind of figure out who that character would be.
but it is
And
about.
it was Timothy Chalamet.
So it was Timothy Chalamet, and so you do kind of consult with him for him to tell you. It's not sort of imposing, or is it? Imposing is maybe a strong word, but sort of when you say filling in that maybe you
Like
are
his
adding some
dialogue, I
stuff.
had to rewrite a bunch of times because to get it right.
Okay. So
Dialogue can be hard.
what's that?
Dialogue can be
Oh,
very
I
hard
bet.
to
I
get
can't
right.
even imagine.
But yeah, him, I had to.
I think everyone has read a book where it's like people don't say.
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah,
people don't
it's
talk like
hard.
that, and yeah. So that's tricky, but it's very, a lot of times very quick moving, very just you're right in there. There's nothing that's taking you out. There are no conversations that are making you go. It's just you're completely immersed in the story, which I think is the sign of great dialogue. Or great writing in general is that nothing is making the reader go, in
That
any
doesn't
way.
go there. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a big achievement as far as I'm concerned, right there. So going back to Izzy, and you had said that she is kind of your favorite of. I mean, I'm sure it's hard. It's like kids, like it's hard to pick a favorite, but
I don't know. Did I say favorite?
or she, well, I don't know, but
she's like
she's
the voice, like I love her
okay, her voice, yes.
Like her voice.
So
I love all my characters, but her voice was really powerful to me. I don't know why, especially. I can hear it so clearly.
Sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off. I just want to keep asking questions, but so she just like, were you sort of conscious of the fact, well, you already said that she's kind of like you, but wiser, I mean, but that's what art, again, I think that's what art is. My songs are way smarter than I am.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like, so, and I look to them actually for guidance because it's your subconscious kind of that knows this stuff and,
Well, it was cool too, because I mean, just imagine being 14 and having everyone vanish. Like, and also she's like, I don't know, at least for me, like with the neurodivergent autistic part, like I looked to people like, what do I do? Like, what do I do now? And like my kids too, like, okay, what comes next? Like, now what do we do? Now what do we do? She had to figure all that out on her own. And it was just like, without anyone to bounce that off of, how do you know anything?
Yeah.
Like, how do you even know, is this real? Like is this really happening? Like, am I dreaming? What, without anyone to ask, like all of a sudden, like, there's like monsters in the woods and like no one's coming running. There's no emergency. It's just you and that's it.
And that, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me, knowing your personal story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that, and I don't know how much you want to talk about that here, but you write about it in the book, but then you, at the end of the book, talk about the real life circumstances.
Like long afterward.
Like, yeah, no, it's great though, because so there is a section of the book at the end that clarifies that, all of this, or not all of it, well, obviously not the aliens, but the story itself is based on a true story and based on your experiences with your mom.
Mm-hmm.
and the grief and her dying. And I think that it makes sense that losing your mom at a young age has very, and not having siblings, very much feels like you've just lost everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that you have to make it on your own to some degree.
Everything's a metaphor.
So that is what this book is just, is that
Mm-hmm.
exact reality.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with monsters of a different kind.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's
exactly.
Yeah. So that you learn a lot about you in many ways. I mean, even though she's a fictional character, and she's going to have some differences and stuff, but so there's a lot of, I'm going to jump to the music element of this. There's a lot of music in this book, which is really cool. And I guess I'm trying to think of how to put this without ruining anything, but there's, can I say about the CD and
yeah.
Okay. So Izzy finds a CD that her mom recorded it's like a mixtape on CD.
Yeah.
trying to speak to several generations that are in this room. So, and she speaks on it, and it's directed to Izzy, and so she uses songs to cement messages that she's sending out to Izzy. So keep your heart open, you know, this kind of thing. All these messages that she actually speaks about very briefly then are expanded upon in the songs that you picked. And I remember thinking, like, first of all, it was a playlist that I loved because it's all 80s music. And then I was thinking, wow, I wonder if younger, like middle-aged kids, middle school kids, I cannot get that out of my head. Like us, middle-aged kids, absolutely. Yeah. You know, whether like, you know, 13, 14-year-olds are gonna recognize this music. So obviously it's all
we were
80s.
listening to Cure on the way over.
I know, and but then I realized Gen Z is like all about 80s music right now. And then like my boys were singing Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears and stuff. So they're gonna know so many of these songs. And it was just that I found, because that spans, her experience with that CD spans the entire book. She's looking to this music and her mom's words as guidance throughout the whole book. And I thought that was really amazing. So I'm wondering, because you mentioned in the epilogue, or whatever you want to call that when you're in real life, when you were looking for kind of signs from your mom that The Cure, one of their albums that
the first one,
played quite a huge role, that it had actually been released on the day she died.
I found that out in the hotel room.
Wow. Yeah. And so that keeps showing up. You keep hearing those things. And so I'm curious, the songs that are on that CD in the book, how did they show up? How did you choose those? Did you choose those? Did they come to you?
Because I knew she follows clues that I don't know. I feel like when we lose someone, we're looking, or at least I do, look for signs, like, you know, signs that maybe something of them remains, or, you know. So I mean, I did that my whole life, and I'm thinking about her, and she's like, you know, I've never gotten a sign from my mom. And then suddenly all these signs start coming with the CD, and finding her journal, and like all these, she's getting these coded messages, like she'll see a bumper sticker on a stop sign and it'll be exactly the lyric that was in the song. So I had, she needs to follow clues that her mother's giving her to figure out what happened to everyone. So I took my discography of 80s music and I like pulled it up on, and I searched this, oh my God, I searched through so many songs and lyrics trying to find ones to fit the clues I needed.
Okay, so you already had the clues.
I knew what she needed to do, but when I found something in a song that would fit the story, then I would pick that song. And of course you can't say the lyrics in a book, which is super frustrating, but so I had to like describe.
That's right, you can't say the lyrics. That is really interesting, which I noticed the most with the Madonna song.
Yeah,
so,
like
that's not what they were.
I know, that's not I have to say it goes something like blah 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 instead of it went.
And that's a legal thing, right? Like you can't.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
So I picked. I knew. I mean, I made some things fit. The Cure had to fit.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all. That's how. It all just happened. I don't even know. It all just falls into place, like puzzle pieces falling from the sky and slowly just sort of.
And what a gratifying thing. What a gratifying thing on so many levels.
Over, it's like, thank God that's over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. Especially with a following clue scenario, trying to make all those threads line up.
I mean, it would be fun to look through those songs to try and find ones, but that's also very tiring, like, and exhausting to kind of like be, you know, what is going to fit this person?
Super fun for me.
For anybody that knows these songs, when you read the book, like what you mentioned at one point, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. And one of the clues is that your mom gives you is, look at the bridge, and I'm like, the bridge. There's a room where the light, and I'm like in my head trying to think of those lyrics, thinking, what is she meaning by, you know, like I know that part. So that's super cool too. Okay, we're at the point where we should start moving to the floor for questions. from you guys. So I think, yeah, John's gonna head over there with the mic.
And just a reminder, if you do have a question, just put up your hand and I'll run over to you with the microphone. To start, we do have a question from online from Elliot Blackwell, who asks, how do you so magically and deftly write about characters who go through trauma with such honesty and also manage to end so hopefully?
Hi, Elliot. I love you. I write from my heart. I crack it open and I write whatever pours out, and I hope that it's honest and true. And I mean, that's my favorite. I love books that are real. Like, you know, I want to feel something, and I want it to be pretty too, hopefully, but I want to feel something more than anything. And so I dig down deep into my old broken heart and I pull out all my stuff and I give it to my characters. Sorry. But yeah, like I know it. I know how those things feel. I know what that is. I know what it is to be broken and have to remake yourself over and over again. And I know what it's like to feel empty and claw your way back from the abyss.
Do you feel like a compulsion to actually write that so that others will be comforted by that, or just is that part of the process that you want to?
What I want ultimately is to be the friend that I needed that I never had.
That's a really good insight to that.
That's why I love writing for kids, because I was that kid, and like I had to go reading like some really not great adult content books when I was young to just figure out like I've got all this stuff going on, and like there's no kids books like that
confront that stuff.
And so I want kids books that go into the heavy dark stuff too, because you know kids are dealing with heavy dark stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think that's a new thing for people to realize, that kids have feelings, kids have internal lives that we should be concerned about and interested in. And yeah. Do you have that?
Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Hi. So we both have kids on the spectrum. Mine is 14 as well, just like Izzy. So forgive me if you talked about this, because I was actually checking on him because he had to do his thing, right?
Okay.
So I'm very interested and curious to know, like, you have these people in your life. Did you bounce it off them in terms of coming up with this character? Did you sort of like the process of integrating or weaving in that facet of Izzy's personality? How did you do that? How did you do it in a respectful way? You know, like all these things.
Yeah, that's a good question. I made her me. I made her me. I gave her my things. Now, everybody who's autistic or neurodivergent has different stuff, different, you know, triggers and different things they need and different ways they stim or comfort themselves. But I like to do what I know, first of all, but then I've got other autistic kids here. And so Autumn, I let her read to make sure that I was, you know, because sometimes you know, I want to get a broad spectrum of things. Yeah. So Autumn read and was like, yes, it's great. And I was like, that is great. So yeah, I make sure that, and if I didn't have kids on my own, I would have got another sensitivity reader. Yeah, somebody.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Now, you touched on this a little bit, Kristen, but Annie was wondering, how did you further develop Izzy after hearing her initial voice? And also asked, was her family developed around this voice in any way as well?
Yes, she came out just her. So I had to, I like giving families that aren't, you know, two happy parents and everything's super great. Like, so I gave her grandparents because it's nice to have a different dynamic to a family than just, you know, and of course I, you know, was raised by my grandmother. So, yeah, and I gave her a sister and then I gave her a cool name. But yeah, so her situation grew around her, but I knew the basics of what I wanted her to have. Like, she has no dad like me. I mean, I do somewhere, but who knows, right? So that's what her and her sister both have, no father figure at all. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I'd love to know what advice you would give to Izzy or a young middle grade reader who identifies with Izzy.
Advice. To not second guess, to follow your heart, to be your first instinct is usually the right one. And don't doubt yourself, because there's a lot of doubt, like when you're, autistic, neurodivergent, especially, and with, anxiety and depression, you're always second guessing, is this right? What do I do now? Like, just trust yourself. But like, she said in the beginning with the star, like, trust yourself, in there, what to do, and don't be so hard on yourself. Because I feel like so many of us are guilty. Me, my kids, everybody, we're all beating ourselves up all the time, and it would be nice to just not.
I was struck, I actually texted this to myself. I was struck by the line, I was taught that honoring my body and self always came first.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really very powerful message in the book too, is and something that I don't think, I think that a lot of us don't get to hear that. You honor yourself first.
Our grounds. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I do want to say one thing, because I haven't seen Kristen's Uncle Mark since we were 12, 14, I guess, probably, or maybe a bit later, because we used to go and break into his room in the basement and listen to his extensive record collection. And honestly, Mark, I have to thank you. You're a very formative part. You're a huge part of my formative years.
He was in there. We'd stand at the door and be like, "What's he listening to now?" We were so annoying.
Really good taste in music. And so it was like, in our defense.
Speakers were like this tall. Like, of course we're gonna go in there.
So in our defense, you shouldn't have set it up so well and had such a good record collection. We didn't want us going anywhere. But I always remember that Mark's gonna kill us. And the rebuttal.
Do I get any royalties for this?
Yeah, you probably should from both of us.
Oh, yes.
Okay, from the other uncle. We're into the humor part now. So the question is, did you name your person Raven first, or was the cat named first?
The cat was named first. Actually, a little tidbit. In the original version of the story, his name was Zed.
Zed?
Yeah, Zed. And I really liked that. But then my editor was like, that's too close to Izzy. With the Z's.
With the Z's.
So
Or
she's
Zeds.
like, we need a new name. And I was
Z's? You've been in the States too long.
like, Raven. Yeah.
And we do have time for one more question if anybody has one. Oh, we do have a closing comment from online as well, just from Sherry Green, who says no questions, just saying hello from Vancouver Island. And
Hi,
something
Sherry.
She says, love, congratulations to Kristen, and has loved this conversation. So that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you both very, very much.
Only if you have any closing comments.
Oh, I don't, just thank you for coming. Thank you so much. I love all of you.
Perfect.
Time to
Actually,
si- time to sign books.
Yeah, I think.
yes, indeed. So, sorry about that. Quick tech break. So thank you all very much for coming. I will now explain the procedure for having your book signed. So in just a moment, we will ask you to remain in place while we transport Kristen over to the table. I'll let you know when she's all set up, and then please feel free to wander over. There are copies of all of her books on the table. You can get them signed before you pay for them. Just please do pay for the books at some point tonight. Very much appreciated. I'd like to close again by thanking HarperCollins Canada for putting out this book. I'd like to also apologize to professional musician Nicky Mehta for the way I set up her microphone cable this evening. So thank you for your forbearance. And would also invite you all to acknowledge Kristen's amazing cat tights as well, which have not been brought up so far this evening.
Oh, yes, aren't they great? They have tails on the back.
We are so enormously grateful to all of you for joining us here this evening. Thank you for coming out on this cold night. Thank you to all of you online. And please join me one final time in thanking K.A. Kristen Reynolds.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful night.